Hi everybody, I'm just going to give it a few seconds to see if anybody else joins as well. But I'm going to be talking through progression in Phonics Shed today. And if you've got any questions as we're going through, feel free to use the Q&A box at the bottom, and then it will send me your questions and I'll try and answer them at the end. Or if I can't answer them during the webinar, I'll try and get back to you as well. So yeah, hopefully should be able to answer everything you've got. I'll just give it a few more seconds, see if anybody else joins. Okay, so with the progression in Phonics Shed, I'll start to talk about all year groups first and things that are applicable to every year group, and then I'll go through each year group in turn as well. So to start with, for all year groups, we are a letters and sounds based scheme. However, we have made some changes. So sometimes things might be a little bit different to what you would expect if you are used to letters and sounds. I don't know whether you're coming to this webinar as somebody that already uses Phonics Shed, or whether it's you're interested in starting with Phonics Shed. But there are some changes that we've made to aid smooth progression instead. So since 2007, when letters and sounds was first introduced, there have been a lot more research put out and a lot more development in the areas of phonics, and we've applied a lot of that into our scheme. So when you ask what is phonics, a lot of people respond with it's a method of teaching reading. And I do have a few problems with that statement on its own. I much prefer this definition. Phonics is an umbrella term that includes the development of phonemic awareness and the ability to map the graphemes to the phonemes. A further important aspect is the ability to blend the phonemes to make words, or the reverse, the ability to segment words into their constituent phonemes required for spelling. I think it's really important to bear that in mind when you're thinking about your progression in phonics. It's not just about the reading and the blending, it's about the segmenting and the spelling as well. And skills and knowledge are really important to consider, and there is a slight difference between the two. So a skill is the ability to use your knowledge effectively. However, the knowledge is the fact or condition of knowing something instead. So there's a slight difference there. And within phonics, your skills are your phonemic awareness, blending and segmenting, and also your grapheme phoneme correspondences, and more your knowledge rather than your skills. So the grapheme phoneme correspondence is the knowledge that you can build and apply it with your skills of blending and segmenting. So, for example, if I gave you some new grapheme phoneme correspondences, like I told you a circle was I, and a triangle was sh, and a square was p, you'd be able to read this at the top up here as sh, I, p, ship. It's the same skill of blending, even though I've used completely new GPCs instead. And when we're thinking about phonics and reading, it's really important to remember that phonics is only one aspect of being a skilled reader. So this is the reading rope, initially by Scarborough, but it's in many, many texts about reading. And what goes into being a skilled reader over here, you've got your two main strands: language comprehension and word reading. And phonics itself only really focuses on the word reading aspect. It's important to develop the language comprehension as well. And it's the same in spelling. Phonics is only a really small part of the spelling skill. We also need the orthographic knowledge, morphological and etymological knowledge as well. So phonics is the primary skill for decoding and encoding words, but it's not necessary for all children. It is necessary for all children. It's not the only skill in your reading and spelling. We do need comprehension, orthographic knowledge, morphology, etymology, and your visual knowledge as well. So we recommend doing your language comprehension. That can be quite casual through story time and discussing stories and the meaning of words as well. That can start from nursery all the way up. You can also use your Phonics Shed decodable books and your Phonics Shed teaching books. There are some comprehension questions at the back of those that can help with that language comprehension. And for the spelling side of things, we do recommend teaching the children orthography as they're learning their phonics as well, not afterwards. And teach spelling alongside phonics from year 1 onwards. And I've got a bit of a plan that I'll show you later on that might help you match that up. So for the whole class, we always recommend whole class teaching in Phonics Shed as far as possible. We recommend keeping children with their year group and using differentiation to support in your main phonics lesson instead, and use intervention to fill those gaps in to keep good progression. This is because it's supported by the reading framework, so teachers should be aiming for all children to keep up with that phonics programme. And if we're trying to fill the gaps, it's by giving extra practice, either in a small group or one-to-one. That's whether or not there's a specific difficulty has been found as well. Even if you've got children that you feel need other skills as well as the phonics, it's not instead of. So I always like to think about it when I'm thinking of new skills that I've tried to learn in the past and why and how I started to learn them. So I started trying to learn guitar. I gave up on this one very quickly. I found learning the chords very hard and a bit dull because it wasn't things that I was really interested in that had the easier chords in. And the same with when I was learning how to speak German. You start with hello, which is hello, easy enough. And goodbye is Auf Wiedersehen. Now, if I'd have been told that I can't move on until I've mastered that, then I probably would have given up and not got any further. So I think it's really important to remember that it is okay to move on, even if we've not fully mastered something, and come back to it and revisit it later on. We do also find a lot of problems with ability grouping. So here I've got a child that maybe at the end of reception, they knew about 10 GPCs, but they'd not really picked up the rest of chapter 2 or chapter 3. So they were about here along the progression, and they should be here. Now, if we put them back with the children in reception and they go through reception again, they're not going to catch up. They're always going to be that distance behind. Also, before we put them back, they were about 9 months behind, but now they're at least a year behind because all the rest of their year 1s are continuing through this progression. And also small groups can cause some problems with this as well. So again, if I start with a child that knew about 10 GPCs at the end of reception, they might get put in a small group and make lots of progress, so end up in that one in the middle, which is fantastic. But if the rest of the group don't make that same progress, they might have to go back to where they were, so that orange block over there. And the next group up is already continuing into chapter 4. So what about this child that's in the middle here? Does he go back with the rest of the group and do it all again, even though he can do it now? Or does he go to the next group up and have a big chunk of missed learning in there instead? And we know there's not an infinite amount of adults and rooms for us to be able to support these small groups that we'd maybe need. So whole class teaching is the most effective model for progressing learning. And when you're differentiating within your whole class teaching, please be sure not to label the children and keep them in fixed groups. You can apply your differentiation more flexibly. So I wouldn't think about, oh, they're my group that are always on Simplify. I would use my formative assessment as I'm starting the lesson to see where the children need to be for that specific lesson. And you can use our assessment, consolidation and intervention strategies to help support these decisions as well. So I'll go through each of the medium-term plans now, and I'll start with nursery. So nursery is mainly, it's only chapter 1 in nursery, and we don't start right from September. We start from the middle of the spring term. Now, this is because you want your children settling in and you don't want some of these things to go up too early. For example, in motor skills, children start maybe using a pencil, and we want children to be developmentally ready for that as well. But don't worry about any of your summer starters, because although it's a 2-week spotlight focus on each element, these elements overlap all the time. And a lot of the things are things that you will be doing anyway in nursery. So things like using rhymes like dingle dangle scarecrow. However, it doesn't mean that we don't want to do it either. We want that nice spotlight focus on each of the sounds. So within reception, this is the only time where the consolidation planning is within nursery, this is the only time the consolidation planning is automatically included. So there are 2-week blocks on each element instead of 1 week. There is an assessment week at the end as well. And then into reception, there's quite a big change in reception. We don't have phase 4. So that's our biggest difference between letters and sounds. Consonant blends are embedded throughout the scheme from the very beginning. So even in some of that chapter 1 with the oral blending and segmenting, children might be using some consonant blends. We did this because there's a lot of research showing that children maybe don't need that direct teaching of the consonant blends all the time. So this is one from Masterson here. So they looked at the vocabulary pool for children in reception. So all the words that reception children will be exposed to through books that are typically read to them. And there was 1,072 different words, and 669 of those had 1 syllable. The rest all had more than 1 syllable. So I'll just focus on those 1 syllable ones for now. Now, most of this wasn't expected to be taught most children until year 1 when this was published. However, that has moved towards the end of reception now as well. So yeah, we're talking about just those 1 syllable words. That's the orange chunk here, 669 1 syllable words. And 376 of those did not have consonant blends in, but 293 did have consonant blends in. So they automatically can't read those already. And then if I look at what those words actually are, because 376 sounds like a lot of words, but some of them they can't read because there's GPCs in there that they don't know either. So that won't help them progress. So it's actually quite a few amount of words that are just CVC words there. So if we start teaching the consonant blends from the beginning, the children have access to many more words. However, to support this, because some children still might need that direct teaching of it, we do spend an awful lot of time in reception on chapter 2. So reception starts with the chapter 1 introduction, and then it starts introducing the sets. Generally speaking, it's the same order as letters and sounds. And we've matched the high frequency words so that they're with a GPC that they are similar to most of the time. So we do 4 sets and then have a recap. And usually within each set, there are 4 new GPCs to learn. And the 5th session can be dedicated to more blending and segmenting practice with all the 4 that they've learned that week. Then we've got the recap and the assessment and the consolidation and intervention, which is where you can use that consolidation and intervention strategy poster. Then we do 3 more sets and have a recap. Then we've got an assessment week, consolidation again, and then we do the double letters here. So double F, double S, double Z and double L are in the main double letters, and then we've got the additional double letters as well. And there are quite a lot of blending challenges in that additional double letters, so it's got quite a long focus on that. Now, to prepare children for moving on to chapter 3 and applying these blending and segmenting skills in the chapter 3 graphemes that we're learning, we have got alphabet order and vowels and consonants before they start. So then in chapter 3, when they start learning new GPCs, there aren't actually that many, and they can apply those skills with these new GPCs. And it's the same sort of pattern. We've got a few sets and then a recap, assessment and consolidation. I forgot to put them on separate slides. So in year 1, we have got all of chapter 4A and chapter 4B to cover, and we do start chapter 4C as well. So I'll separate these ones out. So chapter 4A, again, it's a very similar pattern to reception. And then 4B starts at the end of autumn as well. We do quite a few sets in 4B all at once, and then a recap and lots of time for consolidation and interventions towards the end of the spring term. And then moving into the summer term, we've got a big chunk of consolidation and targeted interventions. And we are just about to launch some new guidance to support with this and some recap planning to support this as well. And then in the summer term, we've got the phonics screening check. So a bit of preparation for that before starting the 4C. Now, if your children are absolutely flying with the progression in year 1, you might choose to start your 4C in the summer 1 term instead. That is up to you and your assessments. I have also got this phonics and spelling medium term plan to show where Phonics Shed and Spelling Shed matches up. So we've got what you'd be teaching in phonics that week and what you'd be doing in spelling that week as well. What you will notice about this is we don't do the same thing in phonics and spelling in the same week. Usually it comes up in phonics first, and then it comes back a few weeks later in the spelling as a bit of a recap and a revision, but also to apply those spelling skills to it as well. And then finally, we've got year 2. So we finish off 4C. We started the consonants of 4C in year 1. And then we're going to move on to the consonant digraphs, the short vowels, the long vowels, and the vowel digraphs and trigraphs. So within 4C, you do recap every single phoneme apart from the because it has no common alternatives. Every other phoneme is recapped with all GPCs that match with it. And then the spring one is a lot of consolidation and intervention and assessment for the whole scheme before moving on. So in year 2, your spelling shed is 45 minutes per week for the first 3 half terms. And then once phonics shed has finished, your spelling shed can be an hour a week then instead. And I've got this for year 2 as well. So we have got a lot of social media channels to help you keep up to date with us. We've got Facebook, Instagram, Twitter, and YouTube. If you need anything as well, you can always email support@EdShed. We do have a Phonics Shed users group on Facebook, which we are trying to grow. So we would really appreciate if you could all join and share how you're getting on with Phonics Shed if you're using it already. And if you are interested in some school training, if you just go on the website, there's a link at the top called training, and that will show you all the options. So I deliver Phonics Shed training and Spelling Shed training. If you have got any questions, if you want to pop them in the Q&A, feel free. And also you could email support as well. We'll always get back to you. Thank you for joining the webinar. I haven't got the slides available as all of them, but I can send you some bits if you need to. The webinar will always be available on YouTube as well. Okay. Thank you for joining.